Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama. This is Ghost Talk with 187 PI. Sit back and prepare yourselves for an adventure into the paranormal world with host Shelly Robertson and 187 PI research team. Ghost Talk is broadcasting live from Ohio's most haunted jail. Learn about their ongoing research at the jail and abroad, investigation techniques, and their personal encounters. Here is your host of Ghost Talk and 187 PI founder, Shelly Robertson.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Ghost Talk Radio. With me as your host, Shelly Robertson. Ghost Talk Radio normally broadcasts live out of the Ohio's most haunted jail, the Old Paulding Jail, located, of course, in Paulding, Ohio. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic and travel restrictions in the states of Indiana and Ohio, I am bringing you all tonight's show from Indianapolis, Indiana, live from my home. Tonight, I have a very fascinating show. Easter, the traditions, along with haunts that surprisingly includes places of worship. I know, it sounds kind of taboo, doesn't it? I know. I would like to invite all my listening friends out there tonight to join me in chat at WBHM-DB.com, where you can join in on the conversation and ask me any questions you might have. So, with Easter just 2 days away, let's talk about it, shall we? For all of you out there who don't already know, my father is a Pentecostal preacher, and he has been most of my life. So I am most positive he will be pleased that I'm going to take you all to church here for a few moments. Because largely, Easter is a religious celebrational holiday, right? Easter is the most important and oldest festival of the Christian church, celebrating the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And it's held between March 21st and April 25th, actually on the first Sunday after the first full moon following the northern spring equinox. Now, the biblical account of Jesus' death on the cross or crucifixion, his burial, and his resurrection or raising from the dead, that can be found in the following passages of Scripture, Matthew 27 and 28, Mark 15 and 16, Luke 23 and 24, and John 19 and 20, okay? Now, the word Easter, that doesn't appear in the Bible, and no early church celebrations of Christ's resurrection are mentioned in Scripture, okay? Easter, like Christmas, is a tradition that developed later in church history. Now, as the most solemn celebration of Jesus Christ's resurrection, it's unfortunate that many of Easter's customs are mixed with pagan associations and secular commercialization, right? For these reasons, many Christian churches choose to refer to the Easter holiday simply as Resurrection Day. The Easter season, actually, it begins with Lent, and Lent is a 40-day period of fasting, repentance, moderation, and spiritual discipline in preparation for Easter. In Western Christianity, Ash Wednesday marks the start of Lent, and, of course, the Easter season. Easter Sunday marks the end of Lent and the Easter season. Eastern Orthodox churches, they observe Lent or Great Lent during the 6 weeks or 40 days preceding Palm Sunday, with fasting continuing during the Holy Week of Easter. Lent for Eastern Orthodox churches begins on, and Ash Wednesday is actually not observed. Now, the week preceding Easter is called the Holy Week, and Holy Week begins with Palm Sunday, which was actually last Sunday, the celebration of Jesus Christ's triumphal entry into Jerusalem. On Maundy Thursday is the commemoration of the Last Supper, when Jesus shared the Passover meal with his disciples on the night before he was crucified. Jesus' death by crucifixion is commemorated on Good Friday, which, of course, is today. Palm Sunday commemorates the beginning of Holy Week. It is named Palm Sunday because it represents the day that palms and clothing were spread in Jesus' path as he entered Jerusalem before crucifixion, found in Matthew 21, 7-9. Many churches commemorate the day by recreating the processional. Members are provided with palm branches used to wave or place on a path during the reenactment. Now, Good Friday, which is today, like I said, it occurs the Friday before Easter Sunday and is the day in which Jesus was crucified. And then we come to Holy Saturday, which is tomorrow. And according to the Bible, Jesus' followers and family held a vigil for him outside his tomb, awaiting his foretold resurrection. Bible references to the vigil are fairly, terse, but the accounts of the burial are Matthew 27, 45-57, Mark 15, 42 through 47, Luke 23, 44 through 56, and John 19, 38 through 42. Easter Sunday marks the end of the Triduum and the beginning of the 7-week Easter season that will end with Pentecost Sunday. The word Pentecost is from the Greek word meaning 50th. It's the 50th day after Jesus' death. To earth as Jesus had promised, which is in John 14, 26, to comfort his followers and be their counselor. Okay? Now, Easter Sunday church services for Catholics as well as Protestants is a joyous celebration of resurrection and rebirth of Jesus and mankind. There are several Easter traditions that are solely Christian. For example, the use of Easter lilies is a common practice around the Easter holidays. This tradition was born in the 1880s when lilies were imported to America from Bermuda. Due to the fact that Easter lilies come from a bulb that is buried and hence reborn when it sprouts, the plant came to symbolize those aspects of the Christian faith. Now, the use of painted and decorated Easter eggs, I know this is so interesting, it was first recorded in the 13th century. The church prohibited the eating of eggs during Holy Week, but chickens continued to lay eggs during that week. And the notion of specially identifying those as Holy Week eggs brought about their decoration. The egg itself became a symbol of the resurrection. Just as Jesus rose from the tomb, the egg symbolized new life emerging from the eggshell. In the Orthodox tradition, eggs are painted red to symbolize the blood Jesus shed on the cross. And while we're speaking of eggs, I have to tell you a nice little funny little thing goes on in my father's household, like for family gatherings and dinners, how people will make deviled eggs, for the gatherings. Well, in my father's house, they don't call them deviled eggs. They won't call them deviled eggs. As a matter of fact, my dad calls them angel eggs. And if I say, you got deviled eggs? He's like, no, but I have angel eggs. So I just think that's kind of cute, from a preacher. There are no deviled eggs in his house. Now, what else is funny about some other customs is the custom of associating a rabbit or bunny with Easter. And that arose in Protestant areas in Europe in the 17th century, but it did not become common until the 19th century. The Easter rabbit is said to lay the eggs as well as decorate and hide them, right? Okay. And in the United States, the Easter rabbit also leaves children baskets with toys and candies on Easter morning. I mean, that I always looked forward to that when I was a kid coming up, as finding the lovely Easter basket. And in a way, this was a manifestation of the Protestant rejection of Catholic Easter customs, okay? In some European countries, however, other were this, like in Switzerland, it was the cuckoo bird, and in Westphalia, it was the fox who brought the Easter eggs. So I guess it depends on where you are on what brings your Easter eggs. Now, we also have some Christian groups who are non-observing of Easter. Like many Puritans saw traditional feasts of the established Anglican Church, such as and Easter, as an abomination. The Puritan rejection of Easter traditions was and is based partly upon their interpretation of 2 Corinthians 6:14 through 16, and partly upon a more general belief that if a practice or celebration must be a later development and cannot be considered an authentic part of Christian practice or belief. So if it's not in the Bible, it's not written, it's simply unnecessary. At worst, it can actually. Now, members of the Religious Society of Friends, which is also known as the Quakers, as part of their historic testimony against times and seasons, they do not celebrate or observe Easter or any traditional feast days of the established church, believing that instead, every day is the Lord's day, and that elevation of one day above others suggests that it is acceptable to do unchristian acts on other days. Now, during the 17th and 18th century, Quakers were actually persecuted for this non-observance of holy days. Then we have groups such as the Restored Church of God. They reject the celebration of Easter, seeing it as originating in a pagan spring festival taken over by the Roman Catholic Church. Then we have, your other group, Jehovah's Witness. They maintain a similar view, observing a yearly commemorative service of the Last Supper and the subsequent execution of Christ on the evening of Nisan. Now, they also calculate the dates derived from the lunar Hebrew calendar, and it is commonly referred to by many witnesses as simply the memorial. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that such verses as Luke 22:19 through 20 and Corinthians 11:26 constitute a commandment to remember the death of Christ, though not the resurrection. And they do so on a yearly basis, just as celebrated annually by the Jews. Now, Easter celebrations around the world are similar, but they do have a few differences. As we all here in the USA know, in the United States, because Easter falls on Sunday, which is already a non-working day for federal and state employees, it has not been designated as a federal or state holiday. Easter parades are held in many American cities involving, festive processions, with the parade in New York City being the best known. Now, in the Nordic countries, Good Friday, Easter Sunday, and Easter Monday are public holidays, and Good Friday and Easter Monday are bank holidays. In Denmark, Iceland, and Norway, also a public holiday. It is a holiday for most workers except some shopping malls, which they stay open half a day because, they want to make their money, and many businesses give their employees almost a whole week off anyway, and they call this Easter break. And schools are closed between Palm Sunday and Easter Monday, and most of Norwegians, they travel during Easter, and out of a poll that was done in 2014, 3 out of 10 said their typical Easter included skiing. How fun is that? And us here in the United States, we are looking for sunshine at Easter and lilies. I am not thinking about snow. In the Netherlands, both Easter Sunday and Easter Monday are national holidays, like first and second Christmas Day. They are both considered Sundays, which result in the first and the second Easter Sunday, after which the week continues to Tuesday. Even though Good Friday is an official national holiday, it is not a mandatory day off for commercial companies. In Commonwealth nations, Easter Day is rarely a public holiday, as is the case for celebrations which fall on a Sunday. In the United Kingdom, both Good Friday and Easter Monday are bank holidays. However, in Canada, Easter Sunday is a public holiday along with Easter Monday. In the Canadian, either Good Friday or Easter Monday are statutory holidays, although most of the companies there give both. In some countries, Good Friday is a public holiday as well. In Australia, because of its location in the southern hemisphere, Easter takes place in autumn. Hence, Australian Easter is associated with harvest time rather than with the coming of spring as in the northern hemisphere. The religious aspect of Easter remains the same, however. Good Friday, Easter Monday are public holidays across all the states and territories. Easter Saturday, Easter Sunday is a public holiday in every state except Tasmania and Western Australia. And with that, folks, we will be right back after this short break with more Ghost Talk. You are listening to Ghost Talk Radio on WBHM-DB, Birmingham, Alabama.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello, I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
To the believer, the evidence is overwhelming. To the skeptic, there will never be enough. Hello everyone. Join Kevin and Jennifer Malik, the host of Paraversal Universe, every Friday here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Also heard on WCET FM and The Rift. Log on or tune in as they check out the mysteries found within the 8 categories of the unknown and unexplained, including ghosts and haunted places, aliens and UFOs, theology and mythology, cryptids and monsters, urban legends and folklore, conspiracies, metaphysics, and forbidden archaeology. Listen as Kevin and Jennifer interview the top minds in their respective fields as they share theories and information regarding these unsolved mysteries. For future show and archive information, one can find Paraversal Universe on Facebook, Twitter, and MeWe under various Paraversal Universe headings. So, for excellent talk radio about the unknown and unexplained, check out Paraversal Universe, where all paranormal perspectives apply. Brought to you by the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society, Ltd., and produced by WBHM-DB.com.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to Ghost Talk Radio. With me is your host, Shelley Robertson. Tonight, Easter traditions, and we'll be going on to haunted churches. And if you missed the first part of the show, no worries. You can catch the full show archive on Spreaker, Google Play, iTunes, and iHeartRadio at your leisure. I would like to invite you all to join me in our interactive chat room at WBHM-DB.com, where you can join in on the conversation or ask me any question you might have. Now, moving on, let's talk about that yummy chocolate rabbit, shall we? It is my favorite, just behind that peanut butter egg, that Reese's peanut butter egg. You can never have enough, right? Now, while Easter has always been a holiday with many symbolic foods such as lamb and bread, the Bible makes no mention of rabbit in relation to the holiday. Now, there are a few theories as to why the cotton-tailed creature is associated with Easter. But the most popular reason is that the rabbits are a symbol of new life. And I can give them that, and they also multiply quickly. Germans adopt the view of the rabbit as a symbolic creature from the pagans. Again, we're referencing the pagans. When German immigrants arrived in the United States in the 1700s, of an egg-laying rabbit with them. And that's according even to much of the history books, okay? Gradually, the German-inspired Easter bunny spread across the U.S., and by the 19th century, it became common knowledge that the friendly rabbit brought candy and chocolate offerings in addition to its famous colored eggs, right? But the tradition of shaped rabbits, it actually caught on because of this fella named Robert Stroheckler, and he is referred to as the father of the Easter Bunny business. In 1890, Stroheckler, he placed a 5-foot-tall chocolate bunny in the display window of his department store in Reading, Pennsylvania. And he'd done this to draw in more business. Now, the giant chocolate bunny was created at the Luden's factory, which eventually was bought by Hershey's in the 1980s. All right. Now, we can't forget about also the good old jelly beans. I mean, that's when you see them the most, right? Jelly beans, instead of just fruit flavors now, they come in everything imaginable, even some stuff you don't want to imagine. Like, I've tasted jelly beans that taste like dirty socks, if you can imagine what that tastes like. There is a jelly bean flavor for everything. Now, it's been claimed that jelly beans were first mentioned during 1861 when this Boston confectioner, his name was William Shraft, he urged people to send his jelly beans to soldiers during the American Civil War. And it was not until July 5th, 1905, that the jelly beans were actually mentioned in the Chicago Daily News. Now, the advertisement publicized bulk jelly beans sold by volume for 9 cents per pound. Could you imagine that today? The hordes of jelly beans people would have if they were 9 cents a pound. Most historians, they contend that the jelly beans were first associated with the celebrations of Easter in the United States sometime during the 1930s due to their egg-like shape. And then came the invention of plastic Easter eggs, which, of course, then jelly beans could be put inside, and they were. And that, of course, is how the jelly bean came about, being a symbol for Easter. Now, of course, we cannot have Easter without mentioning churches, can we? More specifically, let's now talk about some of the most haunted churches in the world. Many people, religious or not, don't think of a church as a place to be haunted. But there are plenty of people and plenty of accounts that beg to differ. Most expect most people, when they go to a church, they expect a sense of comfort in the house. Not all churches and cathedrals are purely sacred. Some house non-living entities, some are ghosts, some are claimed to be demons. Either way, the following churches and cathedrals are all reportedly corrupted by the supernatural. And let me just say, any place I feel can be haunted. And I have been in a couple of churches that were haunted. And this first church we shall visit, the Cross, which is a historical church in the Mansdale area of Madison, Mississippi. Okay. The brick structure was built between 1850 and 1852, and it's noted for its Gothic Revival architecture, and it draws heavily from the 14th century English country churches, and it was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1972. Now, the Chapel of the Cross Church was originally conceived as a house of worship for the Johnstone family on their Annandale plantation. The plantation is no longer standing. However, the church is. As a matter of fact, all of the churches that I'm going to talk about tonight are all still standing, places you can go to visit. So if you want to visit them, please get permission. Don't trespass and break in. Okay, so there was this fella and his name was John Johnstone. And he migrated from North Carolina to Madison County, Mississippi in 1819, and he established Annandale, the plantation. The tradition maintains that Johnstone was descended from the Johnstone family that once held the title of Earl of Annandale, and in Scotland. And so he named his plantation in their honor. Now, he had envisioned a chapel for the plantation, but this fella died in 1848. And after his death, his widow, her name was Margaret, began making plans for the construction of the church. Almost no primary records for the construction of the church survive today, but is commonly believed by architectural scholars that this English-born architect by Frank Willis, he designed the Chapel of the Cross for Margaret Johnstone. Now, she had much of the work on the church done by plantation slaves, and they made all the bricks by hand right there on the site, and the rest of the construction was handled by hired artisans. Now, Johnstone, she spent of $3,000 back in that time to build this church. She deeded the church in 10 acres to the Diocese of Mississippi in June 1851, and the building was consecrated September 19th, 1852 by William Mercer Green, who was the first bishop of Mississippi, right? Now, Margaret, who had this house built, she died in 1880, and her plantation was sold. The grand 3-story, 40-room Annandale mansion, built by her in the mid-1850s, was occupied for some time, and it burnt down September 1924. After Margaret's death, the diocese alternated between using the church and keeping it inactive. It declared the parish extinct in 1903. Now, Margaret Parsons, who was a granddaughter of John and Margaret Johnstone, persuaded the diocese to reactivate the church as a house of worship in 1911, and it was restored to the diocese in 1914. Since that time, priests have taken charge of the operations. The diocese started a restoration of the chapel in 1956, and in 1979, a few years later, after the addition of the church to the National Register of Historic Places, the United States Department of Interior awarded a $50,000 grant to finish the restoration. So, now you see the storyline and stuff behind this church, right? So, the church has a couple of ghost stories associated with it that's been chronicled in 2 books and one booklet, actually. First is that of a woman named Annie Devlin, and she was a former governess who died at the Annandale Mansion in June 1860. Yeah. And it is said that she haunted the mansion until that night that it burnt down in 1924. And the second ghost story is that of Helen John and her fiance. His name was Henry Vick. Helen was the youngest daughter of John and Margaret. And her fiance Henry, he descended from the founder of Vicksburg, and the two met in her sister's home in December of 55, and they became engaged to be married in 1857. And so they were supposed to be married May 21st, 1859. And Vic, subsequently, he was killed in a duel in Mobile, Alabama, May 59. So his body was brought back to Annandale and buried in the churchyard to the rear of the church, right? Of course, a grief-stricken Helen visited the grave every day until her death in 1916. Since then, eyewitnesses have claimed that Helen's ghost can be seen near the old cemetery on certain nights. Other visitors to the Moody Church have reported hearing bells and noises inside the church during early morning hours. And there's one occasion where these two students from Belhaven College, they were exploring the grounds during a moonlit night and thought they saw faces in the church's window, and they heard organ music. Other commonly reported sightings involve ghostly children passing through the church's iron gates before disappearing, as well as disembodied laughter. And so that is quite interesting. There's a lot of history behind that particular church and the actual property. Could it be haunted? I believe so. To move on to this next place, it's called Egg Hill Church. I know, what an odd name, right? It's a historic church located at Potter Township, in Pennsylvania. And it was built in 1860 and is a one-story building built of pine on a stone foundation. All right, it measures 35 feet wide, 42 feet long. Regular services at the church was suspended in 1927. And the church is actually located at the southwest end of Egg Hill. It was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1979. Now, some people say that Egg Hill Church may be home to the ghosts of murder victims. Local legend says that in the late 19th century, the church's minister decided to kill his entire congregation during a Halloween service. While the congregation's children played in the rooms below the main church, the minister passed around poisoned bread and wine. And while the sickened congregation choked on their last words, the children ran upstairs to see the final moments of their parents. And at the height of all of this going on, the minister hung himself near the altar. Some believe that his ghost haunts the abandoned church, while others believe that the ghosts are of his victims, right? I might add that I personally have not been able to find any historical data that supports this event ever having happened. And I have looked, and I haven't found anything, but all those years ago, it's hard. It's so very hard finding records sometimes. But that's the local legend. So next, we shall visit St. Andrews on the Red, which is located in the town of Kirk, which is more or less a suburb of Winnipeg in Canada. It's the oldest Anglican stone church in Canada, west of the Great Lakes. Now, the church was built in 1845, and they finished it up in 1849, and it was actually designed by an archdeacon, William Cochran, and the stonework was done by a fella named Duncan McRae. The church was the worship place of many of the retired Hudson and their families. And it very well may be the region's most haunted, thanks to the spirits of former plague victims. Other apparitions are said to populate the church's graveyard. Eyewitnesses have reported seeing a ghostly man clad in black and a mysterious woman in white. Notice the woman in white. She appears everywhere. Everywhere. Also, a disembodied pair of red eyes have startled visitors in the past, while a ghost car has also been seen not far from the church's main entrance. And so if you're thinking about visiting the church or its graveyard, people will warn you to be wary because there's many people that's claimed to have been there and seen various apparitions. These people have reported having terrible, terrible nightmares the next few following nights of visiting and seeing things there. Most of these nightmares are said to involve the gates of the cemetery, which rattle even though no hands are seen shaking them. So they're just rattling. And beyond that, I don't even know what the dreams have. But that is what it, oh yeah, and cats like at the jail. Yes, noise like at the jail without seeing anything move at all. Very good, very good. So, can that actually happen? Of course, I've seen it. I've seen stuff like that happen with my own eyes and heard it with my own ears. And with that, folks, we will be right back with more ghost talk after this short message. You are listening to Ghost Talk Radio on WBHM-DB, Birmingham.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to Ghost Talk Radio with me as your host, Shelley Robertson. If you missed the first part of the show, no worries, folks. You can catch the full show archive on Spreaker, Google Play, iTunes, and iHeartRadio at your leisure. And of course, you can all join me in chat, WBHM-DB.com, where you can join in on the conversation and ask me any questions you might have or make any comments. So, I've been talking about some of the most haunted churches around the world. Now, mind you, that's not all of them. There's lots and lots of them. There's so many of them. It's hard to believe how many of them that there are. only giving my time tonight, I can only go over a handful of those. But, it's some interesting ones that maybe you've never heard of before. And this one, maybe you have, this next one. So next, I'm going to take you to New York, to the Brooklyn landmark, the Most Holy Trinity Church, and that may also be the borough's most haunted site, right? While the modern structure was completed in the 1880s, the church's school building was built on top of a former cemetery. And we all know how taboo that can be. Accordingly, it's widely believed that the spirits that once haunted the cemetery now haunt the school building. In particular, flickering lights, disembodied footsteps, and strange voices have been reported in the church's gymnasium. Another ghost is said to come from the church's belfry. During the time when the church almost exclusively catered to the area's German Catholic population, there was this bell ringer, and his name was George Stelz. And unfortunately, he was butchered by burglars who left their bloody handprints inside the church. How gruesome is that? And why would you? Visitors have claimed to feel uneasy in the church's vestibule, while others have claimed to hear ghostly bells ringing throughout the church. And besides Stelz, the church's other famous ghost is a pastor who built the church's rectory in 1872. The pastor who died inside the church is said to still haunt the church's grounds as a benevolent spirit. So obviously he is not happy about something. Next, we shall visit the Church of St. Mary the Virgin, which is a small parish church in the village of Clophill, Bedfordshire, England. And it may be the most infamous and haunted house of worship in all of England. This place is, believed to be over 400 years old. Okay, it's very, very old. St. Mary stood abandoned for years until it was renovated in the 1840s. Now, this Victorian-era church initially housed a very small congregation, but few decided to remain once the rumor mills started turning, and you know how that always does to things when rumors start flowing. Word in the area claimed that with Jerusalem, thereby it desecrated the soil. Another rumor that held the new church up was that it was built atop a leper colony. Okay, so that started scaring a lot of people away. Now, in 1963, and that's not all that long ago, the Church of St. Mary Virgin grabbed headlines across the nation when it was reported that a black mass had been held in the church by local Satanists. Specifically, it was written that the graves of 6 women were dug up in order to perform necromancy, with one of the skeletons being left behind inside the church itself. Shockingly, the blasphemous acts at Clophill followed a string of strange occurrences in Bedfordshire and Luton. In April 1963, a boy found evidence that several area cows had been decapitated, while a former forestry student admitted to the press that he and a few friends had killed an animal and sprinkled its blood inside the St. Mary's in 1961. Now, following these events, subsequent black magic activity was reported in and around the church. Worshippers abandoned the church in droves, as you can imagine. And to this day, paranormal investigators continue to study the building along with its ghosts and demons. As of today, this church is still standing, but of course is no longer in service. Next, we shall visit. Let's go to Ireland. I just love Ireland, and they have so many haunted places in Ireland. I need to go there. Next, we shall visit St. Michan's Church, which is an Anglican church located on Church Street in Dublin, Ireland. Now, the first Christian chapel on this site dates back from 1095. That's a long time ago. My brain can barely wrap around this. And it operated as a Catholic church until the Reformation. The current church dates from 1686, and that's so long ago I can even barely wrap my mind around that, right? It served the Church of Ireland parishioners in Dublin for more than 300 years. And if you look up any of these churches, oh my gosh, the architecture of these places are absolutely fascinating, right? And especially being so old. They're so ornate and they're just fantastic looking. Now, this church, it is well known for being one of the most haunted places in Ireland. Now, below the church, the catacombs, or the which are made of limestone, they store the mummified remains of the former congregation. Preserved down below are the church leaders, a mummy of a 400-year-old nun, and several political figures. Creepily enough, they can also be viewed by public visitors. Yes, they're open to the public, so you can go visit them. There have been many people being touched by what feels a cold hand. There have been reports of hearing whispered and disembodied voices. And many people say you can feel a presence just by stepping inside. Okay? That is fascinating, right? Next, we shall visit San Bernardino alle Ossa, and that is in Milan, Italy. The San Bernardino, best known for its ossuary, and what that is, it's a small side chapel decorated with numerous, get this folks, human skulls and bones. In 1210, adjacent cemetery ran out of space. This room was built to hold the bones. Now, a church was attached in 1269, and that is just think about that, a room built just to hold bones. It was renovated in 1679, and it was destroyed by fire in 1712. However, a new, bigger church was then attached to the older one, and, of course, dedicated to St. Bernardino of Siena. And this particular church brings more scares to Milan than any other ossuary, okay? So, like, the room is filled with thousands of human bones on display, and I guess they are displayed in elaborate designs. The crypt has skulls of femurs, and the skulls and the femurs are displayed to create patterns, which many say they rival many art forms, right? I guess. This room also became necessary after a leprosy epidemic consumed the city during the 17th century. And many people have gained a sense of uneasiness when stepping foot into this room. Additionally, there are rumors that the skull of a young girl comes to life each November 2nd on All Souls Day. And it is also told that her lively skull coaxes many of the others to join her and also come to life. Now, of course, I would love to verify this event. So, I guess my trip to Italy needs to be for All Souls Day. Next on to Adams Grove Presbyterian Church in Dallas County, Alabama. This church was built in 1853, but it is now privately owned. The church was formed 5 years after the first person was buried in the cemetery. An active congregation worshiped there until 1974, and it is now listed on the National Historic Registry. The congregation was Baptist while they were still meeting here. Now, historic churches with a cemetery, there are many reports that this place of worship is haunted. Some people report having visits from a Confederate soldier that orders them off the property. Others have been visited by what they believe to be a spectral minister dressed in all black. And, there's also been various specials on television where paranormal researchers visit this property, but nothing has been conclusive as of yet on those shows. Now, church visit for the night is the Washington National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. It was modeled in modern English Gothic style of the 14th century. The Washington National Cathedral is the 6th largest in the world and the 2nd largest cathedral in the United States. And look it up. The photos are fascinating of this place. They have daily visitors and a large attendance for Mass on Sundays. In 1946, the neo-Gothic monolith structure, it suffered a fire in the library that took some innocent souls. When people visit down there, they often report feelings of uneasiness, and also they feel that they're being watched. There is also a famous ghost rumored to stay at the Washington National Cathedral, and it is none other than Woodrow Wilson, who is buried in the cemetery, and reports that he is oftentimes seen roaming the halls of the cathedral. Report hearing him tap his cane against the walls. I would like to let you all know what's going on here at our fabulous network, WBHM-DB. We have some fantastic shows by some amazing hosts and interesting guests. All shows are at 8 p.m. Eastern. Sunday nights, we have Fate Mag Radio with host Kat Hobson. On Monday nights, we have the Paranormal Pride Show with host Denise Prizemore. And on Wednesday nights, we have Paranormal Experienced with host Kat Hobson. You will all want to be sure to tune in to those shows as well. And I want to take a brief moment to thank everyone for listening to tonight's live broadcast. I also want to thank all the first responders, all the folks out there working every essential job to keep America in supplies and things cleaned up and keeping our necessities flowing. I also want to thank those who are staying home for helping in curbing the spread of the COVID-19 virus. Thank you to everyone. And thank you for doing your important part during this trying. Heart goes out. My heart, as well as all of my team, and I'm sure the network goes out to everyone who is sick right now and all of you who have lost loved ones during this pandemic. Our hearts reach out to you. I also want to wish everyone a very happy weekend and Easter Sunday. Keep safe and good night, friends.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experienced Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.